Hi, my name is Madeline Kettner, and my group's monster is Frankenstein. And I'm gonna be looking back and forth kind of because I have a list of like bullet points in quotes. But my group believes that while Frankenstein is a monster, he isn't a harm to society. And Frankenstein's monster was judged solely on how he looked and not what he felt. And I believe that's a classic case of judging a book by its cover. And I believe society is to blame for Frankenstein's actions because society reacted to his physical features, and I think that plus the way he was rejected by his maker, his father, and excluded from society is the reason that they shunned him and they were just repulsed by his physical appearance. So I think that has a lot to do with why he became a monster and why he is now considered a monster. One quote that I found about Frankenstein and why he is disgraced, sorry, my computer turned off, it says, "The form of the monster on whom I had bestowed existence was forever before my eyes, and I raved incessantly concerning him." So that was a quote made by Victor, the man who created Frankenstein, or his monster. And it just from the beginning, Victor was he regretted making Frankenstein, and I think that had a really big role to play in why Frankenstein became the way he was and why he was so angry. And some people do argue that Frankenstein's monster is the monster of the story, but I believe that that is Victor because of how he just really made him feel unwanted from the moment he was born because he regretted having made him. And I also believe Victor and society are the reasons that Frankenstein is the way he is. Society saw that Frankenstein was not like the rest of him, or like the rest of them, and he was just not normal by their standards. And I think it was a really good parallel because the writer of the book, Mary, wanted to portray the way people who are not like others feel, so like being outcasted by society. And I think it was just a really good way to represent how she might have felt in her life. So it was really showing a good perspective of how it feels to be outcasted because you're not the same as other people, or you look different, or you have different opinions, or all of that. And sorry, one second. Frankenstein was in the book described to be really fascinated by nature, and I think that not a lot of people recognize that because everyone just gets stuck on their first appearance of how Frankenstein looks to them. And there's a quote here that states, "I started up and beheld a radiant form rising from the trees. I gazed with a kind of wonder. It moved slowly but enlightened my path." This is when Frankenstein is first created, and it really shows that someone is not born evil. Like, a newborn baby cannot be born evil. Frankenstein was not born evil. He was made evil by the people who just shunned him and made him feel unwanted. And this quote really makes Frankenstein seem childlike and not like a monster at all. And society really only saw the scary parts of him. And I think that is one of the major problems in society today, is that if you don't look like a certain type of normal or the standard, people don't really try to get to know you, and they just basically judge you by your physical appearance or the way that you look. Sorry, I'm a little out of breath. But yeah, I think this whole book really has to do with the fact that Shelley was trying to incorporate how she felt in her life And I feel like that's a really big part of the story that not a lot of people recognize, and that Frankenstein is really just famous for being a scary monster, but there's a lot more to him on the inside than a lot of people think. And there's another quote that is from, Walton's last letter to his sister. He was recalling what the monster had said standing over Victor's dead body, and I quote, "I, the miserable and the abandoned, am an abortion, to be spurned at and kicked and trampled on." And this is a really good representation of how Frankenstein felt, in my opinion. And I think that he was really just upset with how the way society has treated him since the moment he was born. And I think the way his anger was portrayed just really made everyone consider him a monster, and he kind of believed he was a monster himself. And I think Frankenstein's monster really had the potential to do good, and just be a normal person, but again, since he didn't look the same and he was a little bit scary looking, everyone just decided to be mean to him. And he was mistreated by society, which happens a lot in this day and age. And so finally, The Monster in this book by Mary Shelley was a reflection of the victim to the flaws in society. Society is unable to accept someone who is different from them, and again, Mary Shelley really did a great job of portraying this in her book, because you can really tell how Frankenstein was upset with the way people had treated him. And I don't believe he is a harm to society. I think it is the way he was treated by other people and maybe upraised, because when you grow up in his case, but when you were born and you're immediately neglected, it can really alter the way you feel about people. And if people are immediately judging you by how you look or by how you dress or what your thoughts are, if you have different opinions, I think it's just really traumatizing for you and just can make you really upset and angry. And not that Frankenstein, I'm not protecting him for killing people and hurting people, but I think that if he was treated differently, the outcome of the story would have been different. But the message of the story is to not judge people by what they look like and to not neglect people for their ideas. And yeah, I do not believe Frankenstein would be a harm to society, and I think he probably could have been a really great member of society if he was accepted. So yeah, those are my thoughts on why I believe Frankenstein is not the monster that everyone thinks he is.
Thanks, Madeline. So, yeah, as our group said, we believe that Frankenstein was not a harm to society. And while he was a monster, he was more of a heartless monster, in my opinion. Starting out when Frankenstein was first made, he was just kind of born into this world and immediately felt no love. His maker regretted making him and thought he was an abomination, and was not proud of his work. And I feel like that put a really big toll on Frankenstein, because, from the start of the span of his life, I was gonna say when he was younger, when he was first brought into the world, comparing him to how Madeline kind of compared him to a baby. In the first, babies need nurturing. They need love to develop healthily, and you just need it. And Frankenstein was kind of made from human parts. He kind of resembles a human, and, you know, kind of, when he was born, he couldn't just, like, speak, like, he was kind of like a baby, and so, when he was born, and then Victor didn't love him, and he was socially isolated, that put a really big toll on him, and made him feel super lonely, and, you know, he had a hard time, and, and he was just really, really lonely. And also kind of something that Madeline said was that society didn't like Frankenstein, right? He kind of looked like a freak, just a bunch of pieces of people put together, and probably couldn't conversate very well, and it's a tough life being Frankenstein. Alright, like, just lonely. He couldn't have conversation with people to develop, which humans need other interactions with people to develop, right? Like, you can really go to school when you're younger, and you just always have human interaction. And Frankenstein didn't have that, and I think that put a really big toll on him. And I think that's why people thought he was a monster, because he was just different. And I think how Frankenstein's situation could relate to a situation in today could potentially be like a kid that's like doesn't have the best home life, where their parents just treat them unfairly, and the kid didn't do anything wrong. The kid was just brought into this world, and you know, kids who like don't have it good at home, it kind of shows that, and especially elementary school, and just like appearance wise, like if you don't have a good home life and your clothes are dirty and you smell bad, you're gonna get made fun of. And especially if the kid maybe had some like emotional abuse or got bullied at home, it could potentially bully other students to sort of make themselves feel better about themselves because of the way they're being treated at home. And I think that situation could really relate to Frankenstein, because he just wasn't treated fairly from the start. And yeah, and so I think that is really what makes Frankenstein a monster. And something else that is sort of what is why he is a monster instead of he's not a monster, because of just like what he is. Like, monster doesn't have to inherently be evil. Frankenstein, he wasn't born in a natural way, right? Like, just put together with chemicals and then boom, like, just there. And so I just think in the way of creation is what makes him a monster. Like, you wouldn't call him human because it doesn't follow the path of our lives, you know, like. So that's why he is a monster instead of he's not a monster, because it would just be stupid if you called him a human. And yeah, so earlier in the video is kind of why, and what Madeline was talking about was why he's not a harm to society, because something that she said too was that, like, he wasn't taught evil, but also in a way he was, because he was never shown what love was like, but because he's not a harm to society, he, like, I think subconsciously knew that, you know, those things were, so, like, he didn't exhibit the same behavior that Victor was exhibiting to him.